Good morning, everyone. How are you? I wanted to jump online today and I decided to do it a little bit earlier than I normally do because if you can see, that white is my front window. We are getting a massive snowstorm. So hopefully the connection and the power holds. Well, I wanted to talk to you about a topic that a lot of moms are in the middle of doing right now. And that is switching to a new curriculum. Or maybe you're just starting to homeschool and so you're hunting around for your curriculum. So curriculum can be overwhelming, or homeschool programs, or trying to figure out what in the world are you going to use to teach your kids. If you're new to the Practical by Default page, I am Jen McKinnon and I am the coffee drinker homeschool mom who works inside, outside the home and volunteers while homeschooling. So all kinds of things going on in my life and many of your lives. I'm sure most of you are very busy moms working and homeschooling your kids. So obviously picking out curriculum or what in the world are you going to use to teach your kids can be a struggle. It can be overwhelming. Do a quick Google search and you're buried in information. But I wanted to share with you something kind of like a formula that I use for choosing curriculum, and it's maybe something you haven't heard before. So instead of going through all of that, the way I pick out curriculum, the system or things that I take into mind are you, your child, your family, and then your homeschool. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's break it down. So do you have your curriculum picked out already? Are you using something that you love? If there's a program you love, please leave it below. I'd love to hear what you're using, what you like, or even something you don't like. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes of why those things are important. But the first thing that you need to consider when choosing something new is you. And I find this is the one thing that most of us moms totally forget. We leave ourselves out of the equation. And it's kind of funny, but it really came kind of like hit me the other day is when I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw all these memes and videos and people were using slime and Play-Doh. And I'm going to admit, I have never made slime. Am I the only homeschool mom that has never ever made slime? That is just not, I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the texture of it. It looks like a hot mess. I'm not a glitter mom. I have played Play-Doh with my kids, but we put down a tablecloth, one of those plastic tablecloths, and we had all our messy fun there, and then we were able to clean it up easily. So what does this have to do with picking out curriculum, you might think, or programs? It's very important to remember you. If you are the type of mom who runs the other way when it comes to glitter, that's okay. You do not have to include glitter, slime, and Play-Doh into your homeschool if you hate them. That also means you do not have to include other things that you don't like. You don't have to be a Play-Doh glitter mom to be a homeschool mom, okay? You can absolutely, just checking my connection here because it just kind of gave me a warning like, hey, guess what? Might be getting rid of you. I don't want to be sitting here talking to myself. You do not have to love glitter and Play-Doh or board games or card games. Yes, they're amazing ways to teach your kids, but if it does not resonate with you and it's something you absolutely hate, there are other ways to get around it. So if you're like me and Play-Doh and all that kind of things, run away. Or maybe you don't have time for unit studies or, designing your homeschool curriculum from scratch. That's okay too. You don't have to do those things. So just remember, there's no right way or one way to homeschool, okay? Do it your way, do what works for you, and anything that you're hearing as suggestions come through or you're reading as people are saying, this is the program I love, it works for me, it's great, awesome. Check it out and see, does it fit you? And if it doesn't, that's really okay. All right, so just let it go. Okay, so that kind of has to do with you. We're going to talk about your kids now. Because a lot of times, especially I find the platform of Instagram is really bad for this. It makes me wonder if new things will work for my kids. And then I can get sidetracked or distracted from realizing that you need to teach the kids you have, not the kids someone else has, or maybe the kids you wish you had. So let's talk about this a little bit, is that each child learns in a different way. You know that, right? A great way to figure out how they're learning is just watch them teach themselves something. Kids will naturally gravitate to the way that they best learn. And this learning style may change over time. So I had kids that, absolutely detested video when they were little. And as they got older, they like learning through videos and they like to read it. We use CTC Math, which means that she uses video. She can print out the worksheets. It's multimedia. It works really, really good for her. It does not work so much for my son. He prefers to just read the question, do the answer. So remember that your children, what works for one child may not work for the other. Each child is unique in their needs and their way that they learn. That's why it's really important not to get caught up in the comparison trap of when you're watching what other people are using. Again, look at it and see if it fits your children's needs. So another thing that's really kind of funny is that when I started homeschooling, I didn't do what some of my homeschool friends did. Later in years, I didn't even realize that this was a thing. They gather all these books, they start reading and researching and digging in and finding out all this stuff about homeschooling. I didn't do any of that. We decided to homeschool. I went to a local dollar store, picked up a couple workbooks, put them on the table and said, okay, we're going to homeschool. It was not fun. It was not artsy. It was not crafty. It was very, very, very much like school, but at home. That's a mistake. And, it took a few years for me to find out what was working for my kids and for me to learn that I didn't have to do it like school. But the great thing about it is I didn't get caught up or labeled or narrowed in by all these ideas of you have to homeschool this way, because I had no idea of what it should look like. So it's really important for you to read and research, but then do your own thing. Do what works for your kids, okay? So if your kids love unit studies, or they love, taking a topic and digging in deep and figuring out how it works and creating projects and reports, do that. If your kids like to read the textbook and fill out the worksheet and get it done for certain subjects, go with that for a while. There's no reason why you can't add other things in, because your children are always learning. So they're not required to only learn during school time, right? So for example, we did a science project when the children were little, and we read the books. We read about the planets and all the names of them all and what order they were in, and that was it. And then I went to work, and my son was with his grandmother, and I didn't really think about it. And then one day I came home and he was like maybe 5. He had drawn out all the planets in order, colored them the way he wanted them on a piece of Bristol board. He had a great time. And that was when we were not doing school. He was just learning and playing and having fun. And he retained that right through. And so don't be afraid to let your kids go ahead and learn the way they learn. Okay, so the third thing is your family, and that has to do with more of when you're going to homeschool. So one of the big things when people start homeschooling is they get sucked into your children can only learn from 8 till 3 or 9 till 2 or whatever the public school hours are. And as I just mentioned, and if you watch your kids, once you see how much learning takes place through life, you cannot unsee it. Just take your kids to the grocery store when they're small, and you'll notice that they will pick out the shapes of the boxes, they will pick out the colors of the packages, they will sort them into vegetables and cans, and all kinds of learning can happen at the grocery store. And through your conversations, right? So as you're reading to them, as you're having conversations, you'll start to notice how much information they're actually learning through just talking about what's going on and the questions that you ask. I remember when they were super small, we used to set the table. And so, we're talking like 2 or 3, right? And so we would have these back and forth discussions about how many people lived in the house. There was mommy and daddy and your little brother or sister, and how many plates do we need? And then we'd count the plates. And so through these discussions, our kids are learning. My nephew, I think it's my nephew. No, he's my cousin's little boy, so whatever that makes him. I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning to make that connection. Anyways, I just saw him this past weekend, and he is, I believe, 2.5. And so he's running around the parking lot, and he's counting. He's like, I see a red car, and it has 2 tires on this side. And his grandmother said, how many tires are on the other side of the car? And so he runs around, he's like, 1, 2. And she's like, and how many tires altogether? And, these are the types of conversations. As our kids get older, they change, of course, into deeper and more expanded. They're beyond counting tires, but your kids are always learning. And so if you are in a state or a province where you have to keep track of what they're learning, don't forget to journal in or mark in these types of activities: cooking, life skills, mowing grass or shoveling driveways, learning the science behind snow and snowstorms, and what happens and what to do if there's an emergency, and how to take care of the house and the pets and all that stuff if the power goes out. What do you have to have? All of life, they learn so much, so don't forget that. And if you're a working mom, your kids can learn on storm days, they can learn on holidays, they can, you can do your programs not just Monday to Friday, but take advantages of the weekends and the holidays. We like to have our weekend on a Wednesday. For a few years, that was our day off, and we would go and do field trips and park days and all those kinds of fun things, because that's the day that we had, and I worked on the weekends. So don't be afraid to, mix it up and do what works best for your family as a whole. So the last thing we want to talk about is your homeschool. So often I hesitate to share what's working for me and my family because it doesn't work for everybody. You ever notice how we're encouraged to have all the answers, especially if we've been homeschooling for a while? So I've been homeschooling for 13 years, and I don't have all the answers. And the reason that is, and maybe I'm not supposed to say that, is because what works for me may not work for you. And so I really hate it when someone's like, well, there is one way to homeschool your child and you need to use this program. No, that's not the way it works. But I do have great friends that know all kinds of information. So Tina Robertson has a wonderful program for brand new homeschoolers, and she knows about deschooling. She knows about, picking out curriculum for brand new homeschoolers and how to get started. And she's wonderful. Do I think she has all the answers? No. She's been homeschooling longer than I have. So, we all have things that we do know. And all of us, even if you're brand new, I love talking to brand new homeschoolers because they have all these amazing ideas. And hopefully it's because they haven't lost that from talking to, and getting dragged through the mud of like, oh, you need to do it one way. So older veteran homeschoolers can learn from new homeschoolers because they can learn to broaden their horizons and really try to think outside the box. And us veteran homeschoolers can help new homeschoolers about, working through the system and asking great questions. So that's where community really comes in. And Karika, I think her last name is, talks about high school, and she's a really great resource. And I love talking with her and trying to figure out what I'm doing with my high schoolers, because every season of homeschooling, every year it seems to change. And so one thing I want you to keep in mind when you get into a homeschool group, especially I find December, January, our kids kind of go through this shift. And so whatever was working, last month might not work right now. So you may need to step away from your homeschool programs and take a break and deschool or work in something completely different. So if you've been doing hands-on learning, maybe switch to some online or workbook or the other way around. So I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say about picking out your curriculum. I would just say, and picking out your homeschool, is just remember to tailor it for you. So make sure you pick out things that you enjoy. If you're excited about the homeschool program that you're teaching, your kids are going to be excited too. And don't do the, you don't have to do the whole Play-Doh and glitter thing to be a homeschool mom. Trust me on that one. Remember, it's about your kids. So teach the kids you have, not the kids everyone else seems to have. So if it's working for someone else, by all means, test it out. But if it's not working, don't be afraid to step away and say, no, this is for us, pass. Or even just set it on the shelf, come back to it later. Remember, it's your family. So, you can homeschool on the weekends, you can homeschool in the evenings, your kids can learn through life. It doesn't have to be 8 to 5 or 8 to 3, Monday to Friday. And then after you've considered all of those things, you can start digging in and looking to see what type of programs or books or workbooks or whatever will work for you. So, Happy New Year. Happy to new adventures. Happy to new month. I like to do a review at the beginning of every month, actually, to see what's working and what's not working, so we can move forward. But I do know most people like to do this type of review in January, so that's why I'm doing this video now. I hope that has helped you out and given you some guidance and some ways to look outside the box and really make your homeschool work for you and make it a success. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll come back and answer them. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and have a great day.